So I wanted to introduce, or rather, I want to introduce um, BigQuery. So BigQuery is a data warehouse. Is the one we would have used in place of DocDB. But since DocDB is lighter to integrate and get started with, we use that. So one thing to note when you're starting out with data warehouses is there's an important concept which I introduced earlier, right, in our classes, which was OLTP and OLAP, right? Using BigQuery and using Postgres, using any sort of database, this knowledge is very fundamental to using them effectively, right? Anywhere you go, it's something that should be in our mind, understanding the difference between OLTP and OLAP. So, like I said, OLTP is an online transaction processing, while OLAP is online and analytical processing, where I stated that OLAP is made specifically for analytics purposes, right? You can use you can use an OLTP database like Postgres, for example, for analysis, right? Aggregation, joins, and the likes, but it's not as well suited as it is as data warehouses like BigQuery and Snowflake are. So one difference I would like to start from is why some companies might even be using Postgres for their analysis. Postgres, MySQL Server, and those ones. So those are is it relational databases? Those are OLTP databases, right? And they use that maybe for all these legacy businesses, all these large businesses have been using those sort of Oracle systems, legacy systems for the longest time before being able to adopt all these new and modern technology. So the such systems, such businesses will be using them. Another case would be smaller, very small companies, right? Very small businesses or companies, maybe professional companies could be using databases like Postgres because your costs will be kept relatively low, right? It's not exactly scalable like data warehouses like BigQuery and Snowflake, but your costs will remain relatively low. So cost is one of the major issue with data warehouses. It's not an issue, but it's something that every user is very conscious of, right? Cost related issues. So for example, in Postgres, if you were to use Postgres now and you were to run a query, in Postgres, this query would run, right? Your query would run normally. So if you were using Postgres for your database, you're going to host your Postgres database on a server or locally. So if you're hosting on a server, payment is usually just a one-time fee. So for example, you're paying $10 monthly for hosting on a server, right? Regardless the amount of queries you run or the volume of queries you run, your payments for that month is not going to exceed that $10, right? So if you run it once, if you run it 100 times, you will still be charged $10 at the end of the month. Now, if you go into data warehouses most times are like a pay as you go process, right? So if you were to run the same query inside a data warehouse, you will be charged per run, right? So every single run that you make in your data warehouse, you will be charged an amount. And for BigQuery, I think the charge is about $5. I've not really checked it, but when I was researching, I saw it was about $5 for like 1 terabyte of query, right? So anything less than that is to still be adding up. Billing, we don't need to go to billing for now, so let's just go down to BigQuery. So if you go into Google Cloud, right? Once you enter into Google Cloud, you definitely see the homepage. It's probably something like this. So you would see your homepage, and in Google Cloud, there's a lot of things going on, right? There's a number of other things going on apart from just BigQuery. So, but you go down and you see BigQuery over there. So you just click on BigQuery, and then you go into your BigQuery project. But remember, you have to like sign in. If you've not signed in, you have to sign in, create an account in Google Cloud, and obviously you probably have to put in your billing details, right? So it's important you put this in. You won't get charged, right? So it's not like you get charged the next day. So you are not going to get charged. Like I have never gotten charged, so as long as I've been using it. You have, if you're just signing in for the first time, you should have like $400. First time I signed in, you have like $400 worth of credit for extra things, right? Extra things in Google Cloud itself, not just BigQuery. But other than that, if you're using BigQuery, just BigQuery, you won't get charged. So um, BigQuery allows for like processing of 10 gig worth of data monthly, right? At zero dime. So my billing account has been set up here. As you can see, I've been using BigQuery for like last few months, but I've not been charged not once. Right? It's just important to know because once you want to start learning to use a data warehouse, I think BigQuery is our closest option to anything free. Right? If you use Snowflake, you get 30 days free trial. That's what it gets after free trial. I don't know what goes on after that. I've not attempted to use that free trial, but it says 30 days free trial, and then probably it start charging after that. For the rest, Amazon and the likes, I've not had any idea of those ones. For Microsoft, I think there's Azure, Fabric, or one of those things. I don't know if they are free, so I've not tested them, I've not checked them out. But BigQuery is the easiest to set up and to start using. Right. So, as I was saying, back to our main differences. First, now start up is the main differences between an OLTP database like Postgres and then an OLAP database like BigQuery. So, one of the major differences, which I've gone through this before, I don't know if I should repeat it again, but just to brush through major differences. So, one of the differences in BigQuery and Postgres is once if you were to run a query, so if you were to run a query in Postgres, right, it reads in a row based fashion. So it's going to read, let me pick a bigger, let me pick a bigger table, other items. Oh my god, I should not have run this. Forgetting this table is very huge. Forgetting this table is very huge. I should have used a smaller one or limited it. Oh, cancel query. Um, okay, so that's better. So in Postgres now, if you were to run a query, right, like I just did earlier on, if you were to run a query, if you were to say select a single column, select a single column from your table. So our table is other items, and we were to select a single column and run this column. What do I do? Um, select other ID from other items. Okay, so if we were to run, select a single column from our table and we're to run it. The thing is, Postgres OLTP databases are row-based database. So they don't just read only this other ID column, right? They end up reading every other column in it, but it's returning only other ID. So if you were to run this, it's going to read every column it's going to read every column inside and then return only other IDs column, right? It's not a column based storage. So imagine trying to read through millions of rows just to pick out only one column, right? Which is not efficient by any means. But if you were to repeat the same in BigQuery, right? BigQuery processes only I don't want to run any query there. So BigQuery, if you were to run similar query in BigQuery or an OLAP database, it will pick out only that column, right? Because it's a column based database. It's going to read only that column and give you your results. So that is one of the biggest differences between OLTP and OLAP, right? There are other differences, but this feature alone, right, is one of the biggest gap between two of them that really makes them stand out for different reasons. So OLTP is for transactional reasons, best for writing into the database on a frequent manner, while OLAP is perfect for large scans and aggregations, right? And reading, querying your database for analytical purposes. So let's just do basic a basic walkthrough of BigQuery's UI because we'll obviously start using it sooner or later. So now I have a project. This is an existing project before now. If you go into Google Cloud, you should see something like this, and it should also prompt you to create a project. You'll definitely see it there, like create a project. And then if you were to create a project, if you were to go inside here, new project, we'll say create a project, and then you give your project name, then organization. You don't need to add anything inside here. So for my project name, maybe I'll be creating a project for that our DBT project that we've done. So that I'll now connect DBT to BigQuery, and then we'll see the whole project process. So which one do I want to do? Data DBT data transformation, and then we can click on create. This name has invalid character. DBT and create. So okay, so now my project has been created and we are in that project now. So what we want to do next is we can just go over to our BigQuery. So this is BigQuery as it's on its own. This is a BigQuery service within Google Cloud. If you open here, everything under here is still under Google Cloud, right? And this is the BigQuery service within Google Cloud. So if you can see in my DBT project, we have, if you check here, Classic Explorer is just to explore our project, and so far so good. I have nothing inside, right? It's completely empty. So one thing to also, if you want to check for data sets in BigQuery, so BigQuery has a lot of public data sets, and it was from their public data sets I even got that trips data that we used, right? So they have, if we were to check for public data sets here, so you will see different types of data sets within BigQuery that you can literally just import and start experimenting with. Say you want to learn one or two things in BigQuery, you want to learn a number of concepts in BigQuery, right? Without looking for data outside BigQuery, you can come over here. So the one I used that time was NYC trips. So this was the data that I used, and it's a lot. It's very large. Open. So you can see it was a very large table. I only extracted a bit of them to use for our project. So now over here we can this is our everything here now. Everything inside here are tables, right? Tables exactly like the tables that you create in DBT. The model tables that you create in DBT. Once you initialize your DBT project and you run your DBT, you run your maths, your sorry, 1 minute. Yes? No. And you run your DBT project, all your tables is what you would see inside here. So before seeing your table, you would see DBT has a confusing way of naming, but you would see data, you see your projects, right? So this DBT data transformation is your project name. I'll show you this is what we'll use in connecting DBT to BigQuery, right? And under datasets, now datasets is the same concept with schema, but BigQuery decided to name it datasets, right? Datasets is literally the same concept with schema, If you were to go to, you would see your, okay, in this case we have schema. I've not added anything. So you would see you usually have schema, main main maths, what's the staging schema, intermediate schema, those type of schema, any name you give your schema. So that is the idea of data sets within BigQuery. And then inside your schema, like we will have here in, like you will see here in DocDB, you would have your tables. So inside your schema is where you would have those your tables. So let me see. I can't find the table I just opened. I can't go back. Okay, but inside all these schemas, right? If you were to open one, then you will not see the tables within that schema. So that's the idea. Data sets is the same thing with schemas, and then it has tables inside them. So what do we want to do next? Let me go back to my project, my original project. So as you can see, there's nothing inside my actual project, right? So what I'm showing is how we can connect DBT to BigQuery. So if
Let me see your PowerShell again.
this,
You did document. So you have a folder called docdb, abi?
yeah,
So you now open. So under docdb.
mm,
So are you saying the data transformation with dbt that you created on BigQuery
uh,
is under docdb folder?
okay. So BigQuery is not inside your PC, right? This is inside your local drive. BigQuery is on its own. It's an external experience, right? It's not inside your. It's not inside your. It's not
I just
inside your
wanted to
local
clarify
disk,
that. Okay.
right?
Okay.
But
Okay.
it's just there within BigQuery. It's not like Excel where you go inside file, and you open up your Excel sheet. No, it's in beside BigQuery. It's an online service, not inside your local PC. So do you get that?
Okay. Yes, I understand now.
Okay, we can close. So for us to connect BigQuery to DBT, I hope you remember this guy. So this our profiles.yml, right? This is our important guy to use in connecting DBT and BigQuery. But first, one thing we have to do is we have to when we were creating our project, we did not set up BigQuery with our project. So what we have to do is we need to add BigQuery to our project, which I believe is uv add dbt dash BigQuery. I believe it's that one, but let me see confirm. dbt BigQuery adapter. So usually earlier on when I was using DBT Fusion, so remember I said there was DBT Fusion and DBT Fusion and DBT Core. If you are using DBT Fusion, it just comes pre-installed. Right? We don't need to add any adapter. It comes pre-installed. I didn't show us how to add it here. DBT local installation, install core. Anyways, I believe that's how you run it. So you will add DBT BigQuery, but I don't know if it's is only BigQuery that you add. Let me run that. Funny how I've not tested it with DBT Core. So as I'm running it, this is usually the first time I'm testing it. Why is one library 10 MB, 11 MB? What?
Python that is running.
I'm installing DBT inside our environment. So where we created our UV project, right? But usually we used to install it inside the Google. So it's still simple. Whether you use it through your VS Code terminal or use it through your PowerShell. So what we want to do next, I believe I've installed DBT BigQuery, right? This is our adapter to connect BigQuery to DBT. Then the next thing I want to do is to connect BigQuery with DBT. We need what we call a service key, a service account, right? A service account and a service key. So these are the two important things that we need with our DBT project. Our database is literally our DBT project, right? We'll also set in a schema to create what we want inside there, and then we have okay method service account. These are our service accounts that will show you how to create and then a service key. So for today, you guys may not need to do anything. I'm just showing you how every these things are being set up, and maybe by Wednesday we can go through a proper route. So if we go to BigQuery, if we go back to BigQuery, we have what we call service accounts, and this I am an admin is another important thing that we would need to learn in BigQuery. So generally, in if you're using Google Cloud, we don't need to learn everything under Google Cloud. The three most important things that we might have to learn and understand is number one, the BigQuery service, right? The most important thing there for us. Number two is the I am an admin. This has to do with your governance and administration within BigQuery. So it lets you set your environment properly. The third one might be billing, right? I don't really include billing, but it's just something to have an idea of how your BigQuery project is being charged. And then the third important one is Google Cloud Storage. Right, so 1 minute. Yes. So the third important one is Google Cloud Storage. Is no, you don't really need to understand it so much. The purpose of Google Cloud Storage is to save files, unstructured files, CSV files inside Google Cloud, right? So BigQuery is mainly for structured tables, right? Like SQL, like a database. While Google Cloud Storage is just like Google Drive, where you store everything and anything inside. You can query data you can have CSV data inside Google Cloud Storage and then query it from BigQuery. So just an important thing to also note. So back to I am an admin. So within I am an admin, we have service accounts, right? This is the only thing that is important to us here for now. Service accounts. If you go to service accounts, if you go to service accounts, you don't have a service account created yet, right? So the purpose of service accounts, from my own understanding, there may be deeper explanations to it. Here it says a service account represents a Google Cloud service identity, such as running on such as code running on compute engine, VMs, app engines, blah blah blah, running outside Google. Organizations by blocking such as long story. Well, the purpose of service accounts for in our own use case now is to have a means of connecting external apps, right? External software to BigQuery. So in this case, our external system that I want to connect is our DBT project, right? So you usually create a service account here. A service account name. Let me see DBT key. DBT project. Optional. All these other ones are optional. Um, email address, service account ID, email address, DBT as blah blah service account. Okay, then you can create and continue. So here now we have select a row. We are not going to select any row here, or maybe we should. We won't select any row here, so not to. But the purpose of selecting a row is to the service account we created. How much privilege do we want to give this account? Do we want to give this account the privilege to read and write data within our BigQuery table, within our BigQuery database, right? Do we want to give it access to certain informations? Do we want to give it admin privileges, or just user, or just owner? What sort of roles and privileges do we want to add to for this account?
Is it just me that cannot hear you?
Mr. Gabriel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can actually hear you.
Okay, so Mr. Sule, I think it's just you.
We are moving fast though. Because I think I've tried setting up this cloud this thing myself, and it's
Um,
still not working. I think I was unable to do it. But
okay.
you are just going pra pra pra.
I said today is just for exposure, right?
Okay, 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 okay.
We'll still do
Let's
the
keep it.
proper step by step procedure.
Okay, okay.
Mr. Sule, can you hear me? Mr. Sule, let me know if
Yes, I
you
can
can
hear
hear
you
me.
now. I can hear you now.
Okay, so where did you hear me last?
We're talking about creating a service account.
Okay, so I was saying after you create that service account, you now come here down to permissions. So the purpose of this permission is simply just to give privileges and roles to that service account. An example of a role is an admin role. So an admin role will obviously have higher privileges than a user, or someone who can only read the data and not be able to write anything to it, right? Or someone who has complete privileges, read, write, delete, alter a lot of things that role within that role, right? And there's also I am condition, right? Another extra thing, but let's not go there. So you can add multiple roles to a single service account, but we are not selecting any role. Or let me look for a role. Current use owner, basic, owner, viewer. I believe we should use viewer. Let's use owner. So we can continue. Service account. You don't need to add anything here. For now, early on, you don't need to do anything here. So you just click on done. So once you're done, here is your service account. You can create multiple service accounts for your projects, and probably give them different roles and different privileges and the likes. So inside this service account, we want to create a service. We want to create a service key, right? For now, you can see we have no keys within our service account. So we'll click into that service account, and then you see keys. If you go and then add a new key. JSON, we're most likely going to use JSON, right? And then create. So it will create the key for us automatically, and then we'll have to download it inside our project. So this is the key, a JSON file, right? Now you go to your project. Let me see, where's my project? You go to your project, or you can even save it. It's not necessary you must save it in your project, but just to know where you kept it, right? You can go to your project and save it inside. One reason you should not save it inside your project is your keys. These keys are sensitive, so you should not do mistake and then commit it to GitHub. If someone on GitHub, there are millions of users, right? Probably somebody every day is always hunting for that unfortunate person that will upload secret keys inside, and once they have your secret key, you just be seeing bills coming in. You have no idea where it's coming in from, right? So you can save it in a secure place inside your PC, or you save it inside your project, anyone. But just remember not to commit it into GitHub. So for this purpose, I won't save it inside there. I'll just save it inside documents. So save, then close. So we have our key here, which is active. Then now we can go to our DBT project. So we have what was transform
Man,
DBT.
this is plenty things at the same time, but it's well.
Sorry, sorry. It's bit normally it's supposed to take it bit by bit, but don't worry, we'll get there. So inside our DBT project, we are inside DBT project now in our project. So you can see here we have the name transform, and then we have our profile. The name of our profile is also transform, right? So if you go into your profiles.yml, you want to look for your profile, which is transform. Over here, dbt transform, that is not its transformation, that is not its transform, right? So this was what was used for that project. we have our path to our dev our DocDB, but now we want to change this from using DocDB to using BigQuery. So instead of changing DocDB entirely, we can just use prod, right? We can use prod. So dev is your development environment. You're working locally on your PC, you can use dev. At the point where you want to deploy to a production environment, you can start using prod, right? You just change this target to prod and then you save it. For now, I don't know if we should use prod, but let's use prod. Let's just use prod. It doesn't change anything. So what I want to do is I want to use an already existing configuration. Just use it and replace it for BigQuery over here. So we have targets dev blah blah blah. What do we have? Prod type. So I want to get, let me see, targets dev outputs type threads schema method key file location and batch copy. So we can put that here. Okay, so how do we now set up our project? We have threads, don't need to think of that one too much. We have database. Our database is our DBT project. So if you go, sorry, our BigQuery project. If you go back to your, if you go back to your BigQuery project that was created, which is, go to BigQuery, which is this DBT data transformation. So over here, you will see this is your database, DBT data transformation 491,718. Right, this particular one here is your database. So you copy this and you go here and you paste it. Right, replace that. That is your database. Next is your schema. Now, schema is where, okay, I've even explained the idea of schema. Schema is where all your tables would be saved, right? But in this case, schema, you remember we have schema inside our DBT project, right? We have schema inside our DBT project here. So schema math, schema staging, and schema whatnot. And then this schema over here, it usually just appends this analytics to here. Right, so if you run your project, it's just append analytics to maths. So in your DBT, in your BigQuery table, you will see your schema as analytics underscore maths, right? Analytics underscore intermediate, analytics underscore staging. That's what you would see. I don't know if you noticed when we're running DBT, once you created any of your projects, let me look for one. Okay, this one. Once you run any of your projects, you are seeing main underscore maths, right? Even though you set your schema as maths and staging. So this is just the idea of what it will do inside BigQuery, just the same thing. So it's append that whatever it is that is set as your schema in your profiles with what you set as your schema here. So here we'll just leave it as, let me change it to transformed. Let me just change it to transform. Okay, so method service account key file. So our key file is that our service key that we downloaded earlier on. So you can just go to your file explorer and search for that service key. This is it. Then copy as part, and then just go inside there and place it. Mm, So you can just place it like that. Right? Location remains US because I believe that is where our BigQuery project is set in. I think is by default is set in US. I don't think we're allowed to use any other place. And then whatever this one is, I don't know what it is. It usually just comes along with configuration, especially when you're using DBT Fusion. So it just comes along with it. So if we save this, we can save this now. And this is prod. Remember, our target has now been moved to prod. So let me just test it and hope it's connected. So let's run. Let me ensure if that is all. Okay. Hopefully, if that works, I'm very happy. DBT debug. Internal error. Profile should be none if loading profile completes. What does this mean? Encountered error. Let me see. Let me change this. To, or have I affected? Have I done something to my project?
God knows I just dey tell myself say understanding will come later.
No worry.
I just feel like that is the same thing that is in my head though. The understanding will come because I'm just seeing different things. Before I capture one, another one will come.
The exposure don't dey pass exposure.
Sorry, right now I'm just trying to connect my DBT. Trying to connect DBT to BigQuery. Right. If I was using a new project from scratch, that would have been very straightforward. But now that I'm using an existing project that I've connected to DocDB, I think this obviously even me too, I'm facing a new issue here. So profile should be none if loading profile completed. You know what I'll just do? I'll take you to the person that knows best. But at least you'll be getting familiar with one or two things, right? That's the purpose of this class. Just to have some familiarity with what is going on, not to learn master everything on the go. Right? It's just to see, get idea of how the UI movements and all about. Let me see, trying to connect my activity. Profile. Check profile's location. DBT expert in your home directory. DBT, unless you override it with DBT. Let me see. Okay, DBT products. Make sure the profile key matches. If DBT says profile, so over here we definitely have our transform, and then in our profile we have our transform. Do we have a second transform? No, just that. So must begin with target dev outputs key file type BigQuery. For BigQuery pip show DBT. Yes, we've done this. I've done this. So that's inside there. DBT core uses. So let me try it again. At least the earlier one should work since I've used it with .db before. That should still work. But it's giving us an error. So usually I'll solve this before the next class and I'll show you guys. At least since you guys have not even gotten used to everything. So I'll solve that before the next class and then I'll show you. So this now is the general idea of BigQuery. There's still more to there's still more to BigQuery, right? When you start working with tables, you get start learning things that they call partitioning and clusters, but those are like how to efficiently store your tables, right, so that cost does not increase. Because when you're all users of data warehouses, their most their what they consider a lot is mostly cost related issues, right? So running queries that doesn't explode cost is their biggest issues. Saving, storing your tables in ways that cost does not get hiked is what their biggest concerns, because everything you do in a cloud provider, right, with a cloud provider costs money. Every single query, every single job, and every single processing that is done there is it costs money. Unlike servers, right? So if you had a server, it would just be a one-time fee. You just pay and then you use it as often as you like. So why? So if you may now even ask, okay, why don't just use servers instead of data warehouses? There's lots that, like, you can't host a data warehouse on a server, right? You can't host a data warehouse on a server. A data warehouse is a complete service given to us by a cloud provider like Amazon, Microsoft, and BigQuery and Google Cloud, right? So it's completely different. What you can host on a server is your relational databases, like probably I don't know if they host SSMS, what do they call it, MySQL server on. Okay, it's probably being hosted on a server also. SSMS, Postgres is probably hosted on a server, and other sort of relational databases. You could host DocDB. So it's a host a data warehouse like DocDB can be hosted on a server. Why? Because if you remember, DocDB is just a single file, right? You can literally host DocDB on a server. So why not use DocDB? Well, like I said, DocDB has severe limitations, right? Like you can only one process can read and write from DocDB at a single time, which is one of the biggest limitations. It lacks concurrency, right? Multiple users cannot use it at the same time. So there's literally no point. The only situations where you might need DocDB is if you have any sort of system that uses that does processing, right? That does all this sort of processing inside it. So, for example, you could have IoT systems. If you know that your smartwatch has a database inside. It has an in-process database, relational database, which is SQLite, right? So SQLite is just literally the same thing with DocDB. But DocDB is a data warehouse, is an OLAP data warehouse, while SQLite is an OLTP database. So if you have such systems, maybe saving putting DocDB into some sort of system that uses only a single process, right? That is when DocDB can be a good use case. Maybe I like the only thing that comes to my mind is IoT devices and very small stores. So that is one thing that comes into my mind in applying DocDB. But it will have its own use case and better use cases, right? So cost related issues is one thing you should keep in mind when you're learning data warehouses. And like we know, a lot of companies are already adopting data warehouses, right? At the very least, any modern company, any new company that is coming up would rather pick a data warehouse, not because the cost is cheaper um, than Postgres, but because if managed well, it can be dramatically cheap, right, affordable, and you can't easily scale databases like Postgres. Now, something like Postgres, they also have data limits. By the time your Postgres database is reaching 1 terabyte, right? You start to see performance issues. Right? Just like the way if Excel reach a certain level, you see performance issues. In Google Sheets, all those things reach a certain issue stage, you start seeing performance issues. But for data warehouses, you can go up to a petabyte, right? It would still work fine because they don't just use large. It's not just a storage for large data for big data, but they also have distributed systems. So for all our computer science gurus, that knows more about those. It's not something you should learn from the start. It's not really something you should bother yourself with, but just have an idea that you can infinitely scale Google BigQuery, right? Even Nigerian companies should be able to adopt cloud services because a lot of Nigerian companies do, especially AWS. A lot of them use AWS services, right? Because it's actually very cheap. Like I said, $5 for a terabyte worth of processing. And a terabyte is a lot. Is it a terabyte or 10 terabytes? I think it's a terabyte. So all these things are little things to consider when using BigQuery. So I've shown you your public data sets. If you sign in, you can try and explore a public data sets like this one. This was where I got that data I showed you guys earlier on. Then for over here, you can ignore every other thing. You can ignore every other thing. If you want to use, if you want to, the only thing you will need here is this service account, which by next class we will walk step by step on how to set it. Like now I just showed you, just have an idea of service account. Don't think of it too much. And then BigQuery. Like every other thing is not necessary. Cloud storage, another important concept to just know. But so far so good. I've not done anything regarding cloud storage, right? Cloud storage is for storage like your drive, your Google Drive. So it's when you're storing, you can store videos inside there for analysis. You can store text files, not just CSV data. You can store audio files for analysis, that will be used in maybe some machine learning models or some AI models, all still within Google Cloud. So Google Cloud has Vertex AI, but it's not for us also. I tried exploring it once, but let's not go there. You overload your brain. Okay, so who has any question for me so far?